Hi everybody, it's Thomas here from thomasfitzgeraldphotography.com. Today what I want to do is give you a little kind of overview of using Lightroom. Now this video is kind of primarily designed for Aperture users who want to make the switch to Lightroom. What I'm just going to do is just kind of walk through a really simple project from start to finish. This is by no means comprehensive. All I want to do is just kind of give you a rough overview of what using Lightroom is like. I think a lot of Aperture users might have a look at Lightroom and go, "Ooh, look, I just don't get it, or I don't like the way it works." So what I wanted to do is just kind of give you a rough overview of how I use it, and just so you can see how it works. Nothing really more than that. This isn't going to be too complicated or anything like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to import some photos, go through the process of sorting them. I'm just going to do a quick rough sort, and then what I'll do is I'll go through and process some of them in the develop module, and then at the end I'll export some of them and just show you a few things about that. So let's get started. So I'm here in the library module, and I'm just on a particular photo for no reasonable reason. So I'm going to start by importing some pictures from a memory card. So I'm going to go down here to the import menu button, and just click on that. Okay, so this brings up the import dialog. So up here I have memory cards, and then down here are a list of files. So if I want to import from an existing set of files on the drive or on any particular drive, you can import it from here. As you can see, this is all my connected drives. Whereas up here I have under devices, these are my memory cards. So I have two memory cards in a memory card reader at the moment. So this is one set, here's another set. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to import some of these. Now, I've imported most of these already. So what I want to do is just import a selection of them. So I'm going to start by uncheck all. So I don't want to import everything. So let's just pick a few to import. So I'm going to go from here, and let's just pick all the way up to here. So let's tick on these. Okay, so now it's just going to import these particular images. So over here now what I want to do is set up some options. So build previews, I want that on 1:1. So what that's going to do is build a full resolution preview when it imports. Build smart previews. Let's turn that on as well. Now what smart previews will let you do is, there's a couple of things. It'll work with Lightroom Mobile if you want to edit your photos on iPad or an iPhone, but it also works so that if you disconnect your external hard drive, you can still edit your files. You can still do some developing on them, and you can actually, I'm pretty sure you can export them as well. But actually, you know what, I'm going to turn that off because I don't need that. I'm not going to use that for now. You can also make a second copy if you want to, just to back things up. I've already imported these, so I'm not going to do that. Down here under rename files, you can rename your files. There's a lot of different templates. Again, I'm not going to do anything to that at the moment. Now in here we have a couple of things. Develop settings. So this is like if you want to apply a preset to your images. So what I've done is I have a bunch of different setups for different cameras that I have. So these were all taken with a D700, so I'm using setup D700. This was a preset that I made myself. Okay, so I'm going to go with that. I'll talk more about that in a little bit later, because that does a few things that I have that set up to do, a few things that Aperture doesn't actually do, such as lens correction and automatic chromatic aberration. I'll get on into that in a minute. Metadata, I just have that set up to add my copyright information and a few other bits and pieces. Keywords, again, this is kind of similar to what you have in Aperture. A few different types of images here, so it's kind of going to be hard to apply a whole bunch of keywords here to start, but everything was taken in Dublin, so I'm just going to say Dublin. Okay, and I'm just going to leave it at that for the moment. Okay, now destination. So what this is where you want to put your images. So in Lightroom, you can't store your images in the library. You have to tell it where to put them. So I have all my images on an external drive. Actually, my images are routed across several external drives, but in this case, I'm putting it in my drive called Photo Drive. I have a bunch of different folders within this, so I'm going to put it in Photos Part B. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to organize it all into one folder, and I'm going to create a subfolder. I'm going to call this, you can call it whatever you want. Let's just call it a day out. Obviously you would use more logical naming and descriptors for this. Normally I'm just calling it this just because for the purposes of this demo. Different people have different ways of organizing their Lightroom catalog. Some people like to organize it into by date. What I generally do is I put it in each shoot into a folder and I name it something that I kind of have a rough idea what it was. There's lots of different approaches to this. This is just what I use, so I'm just going to do this for the moment. Okay, so that's all I really need to set up. There's a few other things about this, but I'm not going to go through any of that right now, and I'm just going to hit import. So as soon as I do that, it'll go up to the catalog section here, and you can see current import. Once this is finished importing, this will change to previous import, but for the moment we're on current import. So we're importing away here. Now, what you don't see is I actually have two screens, so on the other screen I'm getting a full res view of this, but I can just double click here and I can see it in full resolution here. Okay, so you can go through our images, we can just go through them one by one, or we can switch back to the grid view, we can see everything. Okay, so it's still building previews. It's imported everything, but it's still building previews. We can work away at the moment, or we can wait till that finish. Obviously, that's not really a practical solution for a lot of times. You don't want to wait till it's finished, you just want to keep going. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly go through these, and I'm going to rate them so that I'm not going through everything. Okay, so just going to do this really quickly. So I like this picture, I'm going to give it 5 stars. I like this one, going to give that 5 stars. And we're just going to compare these two. I actually like that one better, so we're going to leave that. Go on to the next one. Yeah, I like that as well. I'll give that another 5 stars. Okay, just going to quickly move through these. Okay, that's not very good, so I'm going to set that as rejected because we don't want that. I've hit the Z key. If you want to zoom in and just kind of check your focus or anything, you just hit the Z key, and we can scroll around. I like this shot, so we're going to go with that. And I preferred the first one. We don't want that. That's a mistake. Okay, we like this shot. Give that 5 stars. And nice shot. 5 stars. We don't need the second one. Okay, we give that 5 stars. Ooh, that's even better. I give that 5 stars as well. Oh, and we give that 5 stars. We'll go back and pick one of them to work with later. Let's just keep moving. Ooh, that's a good shot too. Let's give that 5 stars. Okay. I took a lot of pictures of this. So we can just zoom in here and check the focus on this. Yeah, it's pretty good. I give that 5 stars as well. Okay, that's out of focus, so it says rejected. That's pretty good, we like that. Just give that 5 stars as well. Okay, I have 2 of these here, and I know one of these is slightly out of focus, or slightly blurry, and it's that one. So, I'll just go back and we will give the good one 5 stars. Okay, next one, reject it. Here's just some street shots I took. We don't want that. That was the back of a fire engine. Yeah, we'll just give that 5 stars. Let's see, that shot. Yeah, that's just random people in the streets of them. I'm just going to pick a couple more just to work with. In fact, let me just. Actually, we like him. I give him 5 stars. Really go. Give him 5. I give this guy 5. You can zoom in and just go do this from the thumbnails if you want. I'm being a bit quicker here because I've done this before, so I know which shots are good and which aren't. That shot. That just... Actually, I'm not sure about that one actually. Just... Okay, that was a better shot. Like that. Okay. Yeah, let's just go with that for the moment. So the first thing I want to do is, there's a couple of things we could do here. We could create a collection for these, but I don't need to. I'm not really going to do anything with these, so I'm not going to bother. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to view the 5-star images. So if you go up here to this little thing here, so you click on attribute, and then you can select 5 stars. So this kind of just basically filters your view. So it's like searching in Aperture. It's pretty much the same thing. So that's going to do for the moment. I'm still in the previous import section of the catalog up here. I can also find this in the folders. I'll just find out where I imported it in. As you can see, I have a lot of images in this. So where is it? It's in here somewhere. Yeah, and done. So I'm actually in here. But anyway, I'm just going to work out of this for the moment. Yeah. Go back up to catalog. Okay, so that's fine. So let's just do a few things here. So I'm going to... this is going to be a landscape. So you can see over here, keyword suggestions. This is based on previous keywords I've done in the past. So it kind of takes a rough stab, and every keyword you add, it kind of guesses some more keyword suggestions. And the more images you have and the more times you do this, the better this will get. So I'm just going to go with landscape and summer and sunshine and Bull Island because that's where I was, and the beach because that's where I was, nature, and yeah, that'll do for the moment. So then these two, you don't have to do this, you can do this at any stage. And I know I'm not the best at keeping track of all my keywords. Just a thing too, my system's running a bit slow because I have stuff going in the background, and also I'm recording, and also it's not behaving itself today. My computer has very little space left on it, and that's slowing everything down, so apologies for if this is a bit of a delay. Okay, so what do I want to call this? Airplane. As you can see, as I type, it'll give me suggestions as well. So yeah, that'll do for a moment. And then I'm just going to quickly call these street. I'm going to go with street. City. Yeah, that's fine. That'll do for a moment. Okay, so that's all that done. Now let's pop over to the develop module, and let's have a look through processing some of these. Okay, so you just hit the D key in your keyboard. Okay, so we're now in the develop module. So you have your you've similar interface across all the different modules. So you've a pane down either side, your main kind of viewer area in the middle. If I pop down here too, you can see you have a film strip. You can click on that to leave it up the whole time. I don't need it, because normally what I'll do is I'll have the grid view on my second monitor. So I'm not going to do that for the minute. So up here we have all our presets. Then below that we have, oh, I went too far. We have snapshots, which I'll talk about in a minute. We have your history, so that's kind of a history of everything that you've done. And then here we have collections, so we can jump between different sets, collections if we have. I'm not going to use that now, so I'm just going to turn that off. Then over here we have the kind of the main controls, which I was going to talk about in detail now in a sec. So that's just a quick look at that. So one of the things I want to show you before we start anything else is if we go down here to the very bottom of this, and you have camera calibration. So Lightroom comes with camera profiles for a lot of different cameras, and kind of most of the major brands and most of the major cameras. So in this case, I'm using camera standard. So what that is basically Adobe have profiled the D700, which this was shot with, and they profiled the standard picture mode. And what this does is it's a color profile that basically will match the raw file to that particular picture mode on the camera. So if I go in here, there's a whole bunch of ones because you can actually add in extra ones that don't necessarily have to be the ones that come with the camera. If I want to use Vivid, I can use Camera Vivid. You're wondering what the little V4 is? They actually made an update at one point to the D700 files because the earlier ones were a bit off, so that's why I'm using that. So I switched to Vivid there now, and that will match what if I had shot this with Vivid in the camera. Again, because it's a raw file, it's non-destructive. So what I've done is I've made a bunch of presets that set these automatically on import, so I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to go through and set it for each image. So for the moment, well, let's just leave that on Vivid for the moment. The other thing I have turned on is, if you go in here in lens correction, so I have basic. Under the basic panel I have enable profile corrections and then remove chromatic aberration. So what that does is Adobe have profiled a whole bunch of lenses and they've mapped out the distortions in them for various zoom ratios and so on and so forth. And when you turn this on, it automatically corrects for distortion. So if I turn this off, you can see straight away what's happened. They also correct for vignetting. So again, it's profiled the lens and it does all that automatically. So if I turn that back on, you can see the difference. Secondly, remove chromatic aberration. Lightroom has automatic chromatic aberration reduction, so it automatically detects chromatic aberration and removes it. So once you have that turned on, you don't need to do anything. So again, this is part of my setup. So I always have these on because I'm going to use them for every image that I use for this particular shoot anyway. Different cameras I'll have these set slightly differently, but this is my setup for D700. So basically, just again, I have this turned on and I have enabled profile corrections, I have removed chromatic aberration, and I also have down here we have Camera Vivid, so I have that turned on as well. Okay, so that's that. So let me just go up and go through some of the basic adjustments. So I'm going to scroll to the top of this panel. Okay, so at the very top we have temperature and tint. So this is basic white balance stuff. I'm happy with the white balance of that, so I'm not going to touch it. Now down here we have exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, whites, blacks, clarity, vibrance, and saturation. These are kind of your main controls, so that's why they're done under the basic panel. So just going to talk you through a few of these. Despite the fact that some of these are named similar to the way they are in Aperture, they're actually quite different, especially exposure and contrast. The algorithms they use for this, the math that they use for the work this out is actually completely different than the way it is in Aperture. Contrast especially. So in Aperture, if I used to turn up the contrast, it will clip the blacks and whites, whereas if I do it on this, it won't. Okay, so it's a much more natural contrast. It's the same as you would do if you added contrast via curves in Aperture. So that's basically what that is. That's a big difference. The second thing is exposure is a combination of exposure and brightness. And again, it tries its best not to clip. So if you can see just down here, this is kind of the brightest area and it's not clipping as I increase the exposure. Now obviously it'll get to a point where it will clip. So if you're watching what's going on in the histogram up here, you can see it's trying its best not to, and then eventually it will. And then obviously the same kind of in reverse. It's a very natural algorithm and it seems to work really, really well. You want to reset it, you just double click like you do in Aperture. Okay, highlights and shadows. Again, this works slightly differently than it does in Aperture because it's happening at the RAW stage, whereas in Aperture it's at the RGB stage. So it's not going directly from the raw data, it's going from the RGB data. I'm just getting a bit technical here, so just pretend I didn't say that. Okay, so highlights again, I can reduce highlights. There's not much blown highlights in this, so we don't really need to. Actually, let's bring that rock back in. Whites and blacks, they're kind of like the whites and blacks in a histogram. I can bring that up. So what that'll do is, this white actually works kind of like the exposure works in Aperture. So what it's doing is it's taking the white level and it's bringing it up or down. And then blacks, again, the exact same. I can bring my blacks up, or I can bring them down. Okay, I'm just going to reset all these. Then below that we have clarity. Now, clarity is, again, some people think it's the same as definition in Aperture. It's not. It's a different kind of algorithm, so it works a little better. It's kind of a combination of definition and mid contrast in the highlights and shadows tool. So you can see the effect that's having. You'll see this better on some other images. It's a micro contrast tool basically. Okay, so I'm gonna reset that. Vibrancy, that's pretty much the same as vibrance in Aperture. And then saturation, that's pretty much the same as saturation. So they're kind of your basic controls. A lot of the times you don't really need to go to curves in Lightroom because the algorithms behind exposure and contrast and the other basic adjustments are much better than they are in Aperture, and so they kind of work the way you would do it if you were doing it in curves. So a lot of the times you can get by with just using these controls. You don't ever have to touch the actual curves unless you want to do something specific or something creative. So let me go through a few different images and see. So I'm going to just bring the exposure of this up slightly. I'm going to bring the vibrance up just a little bit. Bring the clarity up. Okay, so a few more things I want to do is I like vignettes, so I'm going to add a vignette to this. Now you've got a lot more control over vignettes in Lightroom than you do in Aperture, so I'm going to bring this down. So that will bring it in a bit, and then what I want to do is I can change it to whether I want a more squarish type vignette, and I'll adjust the feather a bit. See, so if I bring this in, you can see the effect that's having. Okay, I like that. We'll just go with that for a minute. And the other thing I want to do is I can add a graduated filter so that I can darken or increase the brightness, or sorry, increase the saturation in the water a bit up here. So this is the graduated filter tool. So I'm just going to drag this down. Okay, and now I can see I can do that. We don't want to do that though. I'm just going to increase the saturation a bit and maybe bring down the highlights. So what I'm doing is I'm just affecting this top part of the image. Okay. The other thing I can do is you can actually edit using the histogram. So if I hover over the histogram here, I can slide up my midtones or exposure. I can bring my highlights down a bit. Maybe adjust my shadows. Get my blacks down if I want to increase the contrast a bit. Okay, so that's. I'm happy enough with that. Again, I'm just doing this roughly for the moment, so let's just go on to the next image. Okay, so for this image, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a preset. So if I go over here to my presets panel, I have a whole bunch of presets. So some I've made myself, some of the ones I have for sale. I have all of VSCO's presets here, a few other different ones as well. So for the purposes of this, I'm going to use, let me see, let me just have a look at one of my own for a minute. Let's have a look at the VSCOs. So I'm going to use VSCO Film 4, which is their slide film. I'm going to use the Nikon ones. And what I want to do is, let's go with Ectochrome. Okay, so we pick this. Okay, so there's, I'm just going to quickly apply that. Now I'm going to tweak it. So bring my highlights down a bit. I should bring the clarity up slightly. Bring my shadows up. See, that's a bit overexposed. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a vignette. Now I have a whole bunch of vignettes saved as presets, so I'm going to just use one that I've already. Okay, so that's fine for the moment. I'm happy with that. Again, I just kind of flying through this here, so go into the next image. Now, I really liked what I did to the last image, so I'd like to be able to do the same to that. So one really handy tool is this little button down here that says previous. So all I have to do is hit that, and it will copy the setting from the previous image. So there we go, job done. Go on to the next one. Right, let's pick a different preset and see how we get on. So I like some of these ones from the VSCO series, so I'm going to go with Ectochrome again. It's a nice filmic look, so let's just bring down the highlights a bit. So I can go up here and bring down the highlights. Let's just bring some of that sky back in. And maybe bring the clarity up a bit. Okay. And let's just add a little filter on this, just to bring that down a bit. further. Maybe bring the contrast up, just to put some oomph back in the sky. Okay, so that's happy. I'm happy with that. On to the next one. Okay. So let's just do our own thing with this. So exposure, clarity, and the highlights down a bit. Just bring some of that back in. We have the shadows. Up a bit more. Okay, I'm going to go down here. Change this to vivid. Okay. Bring up the saturation a bit more as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to crop in on this a bit because it's a bit too wide. Okay. So let's just change it. We'll leave it in the middle. I know it's not the best. Yeah, let's just do that. Okay. So another thing you can do is there's a thing called a radial filter. So that works kind of like the graduated filter, except it does it in a radius. So you can use this for doing kind of more specific types of vignettes. So I'm going to darken everything around except this. It defaults to use the outside unless you hit this invert mask. So I'm just going to bring that down. Okay, again, it's a little bit over the top, but we'll go with it for a minute. Okay, if I want to zoom in and see on that. Okay, it's pretty good. I'm just going to increase the sharpness a bit. Okay, so let's move on to the next shot. Okay, I'm going to use a preset on this start to the basic again, so I'm going to use one of my Vivid Extreme presets. So let's just go with my Autumn Leaves. Okay, that's all I'm going to do to that. So, on to the next one. Okay, I've actually got a few of these, and I prefer the wider ones, so I'm just going to hit 0 on this. So this will, if I hit 0 on the keyboard, what it's going to do is set the stars to 0, and because I'm filtering by 5 stars, this image should disappear. Yep, so it'll move on to the next one. And again, I have a better shot, so I don't want to use this, so I'm going to set this to 0 as well. Again, that'll disappear. If I look down here in my, see, I don't want this last one actually, so I'm going to hit 0 again, and hit 0 again. Okay, that'll do. Okay, so again, I'm going to use one of my own presets. I'm going to use, let's use the same one actually. Okay, now what I want to do is, actually the blacks are a bit dark on this, so I'm just going to bring up the shadows, bring up the blacks a bit. Okay. Actually, a bit over the top on the contrast, so I'm just going to bring the contrast down. Yeah, I'm not really happy with that. So what I'm going to do is, let me just show you the history palette. So if I go down here, you can see this is a list of everything that I've done already. So I can go back to any stage. So I can go back to when I applied the preset, or I can go back right to the start. So this is my what I imported it as, and we go to preset. So I'm not kind of sure what I want to do with this. So what I'm going to do is I kind of like, that's a bit dull. So yeah, that's not too bad. I kind of like this, but I want to try a few different things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a snapshot. So I'm going to call this test 1. Hit create. Okay, so let's try something else instead. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here to my import. So just back to where I started with. Now that doesn't affect my snapshot, so I can work away on something else. Let's try one of the, let's show one of the VSCO ones. So where's Provia? So hit Provia. That's not too bad. I kind of like that. The whites are a bit burnt out, but we can fix that really quickly. Okay, maybe give that a bit more saturation, just a little bit, and bring up the shadows a bit. That's not too bad. Okay, so I'm going to give that some vignettes as well. So, let me see, I like this. I have a whole set of preset vignettes that I've saved, so I kind of use these a lot, so I'm just going to use that. One of the things I really like about the way they have presets in Lightroom is, because it's not in a sub-menu, you can use them almost like buttons, so I can go, no, that one, maybe, oh no, I want that one. Rather than having to go into the sub-menu each time, it's actually really handy, so that's just another little thing. Up here too, by the way, it's the navigator, so you can kind of, it's like it works like a little preview thing. Okay, so anyway, we're happy with that. Let's move on to the next shot. Okay, again, I can work away on this, or I can use a preset, because I know what I'm going to do to this, and I am going to do that. Okay, I've done this before. Right, so I don't want to do much else to that. Maybe we'll try a little vignette. Yeah, it's not too bad. It's a little over the top. What I can do is I can actually feather that off a bit more. So I'm just going to increase the feather on it. So that's just kind of smooth it a bit. And maybe bring it in a bit. And maybe actually, oh, that's square. Maybe something like that. Okay, next image. Okay, that's the same as the last one. So again, I'm just going to hit previous. Okay, so that'll copy my settings from the previous image. Okay, so on to the next one. Right. Now, what do we do to this? Let's go with one of these. Yep, that'll do. Okay. Like I said, I'm just going to go through this quickly. Okay, so what we want to do with this is, I'm just kind of taking it on a dull day, but I like the colors, so we'll just kind of brighten it up a bit. So I'll bring my exposure up, bring up my vibrance, and clarity. Ooh, I'm going to go too far. Bring the contrast a bit as well. I kind of want to go for kind of a graphic-y look on this. That's not too bad. We can try a vignette as well. It might be a bit much. Yeah, it's kind of a nice effect though, so let's just go with that. Okay, on to the next one. Okay, so what will we do with this? Let's start with the clarity, the exposure a bit, maybe a little bit of vibrance. One trick I find, if you want to do kind of like a bleach bypass type effect, is to turn the vibrance up and then turn the saturation down slightly. You can get a nice effect sometimes, especially if you use it in conjunction with clarity. Okay, that's not too bad. I'm going to make this kind of like a filmy type look. So what I will do is I'll add some grain. Now you have lots of different controls over grain. You kind of need to zoom in to see it though. So we add some more grain. Turn the size down a bit so we get a nice fine grain. Yeah, kind of like that. And again, our old friend Mr. Vignette. We just want a tiny hint one just to bring it in a bit. And while we're at it, we'll turn the sharpening up a bit. Okay, so if you want to see before and after, you need to use the, I think it's the backslash key, or is it the forward slash? I'm always mixing the two of them up. It's the one beside the enter key anyway, so. Okay, before, after, after. I haven't done much to this, but I just kind of give it a nice little tweak. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to be able to use that again in a little while, but I don't want to have to go make a preset for it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the settings. So all I do is hit Command C. Okay, and this will give you everything. So I'm going to check all, because I don't. You can go through and pick which ones you want to copy. I'm just going to copy all of them for a moment. Okay, so we go on to the next image, and if I want to use the same settings again, I can just hit Previous, or I could paste it if I wanted to. That's not too bad. Let's bring this up a bit. It's a little dark. Saturation a bit as well. Now, one other thing I want to show you while I'm here is if we zoom in here, we can see we've got a bit of purple fringing going on here. Now, this is different from standard chromatic aberration. It's not your typical red-green or red-blue chromatic aberration. It's the kind of fringing you get on some lenses. So we can actually, there's a tool for fixing that. So if I go down to lens corrections and go over to color, and you see defringe, so I'm just going to turn the purple up a bit, and there you go, it's gone. Okay, so that's that shot. On to the next one. Now, let me use the one I pasted earlier. I don't want to copy the previous one, so I'm just going to hit Command V. So that's the one I copied earlier. Again, that's a bit dark, so I'm just going to bring that up. I'm going to use the histogram. Yeah, bring that up a good bit. As you can see, as I'm increasing the exposure, the way it's handling the whites is actually really good. It does its best not to clip them. It's kind of, you would do that with a curve normally. I'm going to bring the highlights back down a little bit. And I want the shadows up a bit as well. So. And yeah, maybe I'll just add a bit more contrast to it as well. Okay. So I'm pretty much happy with that for the moment. On to the next shot. Again, let me just see. I can go with my previous settings. Yeah, it's not too bad. It's a little bright, so just take it back down a bit. Again, you can spend lots of time on this. I'm just kind of flying through these. Again, I'll paste my settings. It's a bit dark. Ended up a bit more contrast. Okay, and we're getting a bit of, are we getting fringing, or is that just our runners? We're getting a tiny little bit of fringing. Let's just quickly fix that. Okay. I might just reframe this slightly as well, so I'll go to the crop tool. Let's make this way. That's not too bad. One of the things to be aware of is the vignette in Lightroom is post-crop vignette. So what that means is it bases the vignette on your image after it's cropped rather than the original size. So one of the problems in Aperture is the crop is not the vignette, sorry, is not post-crop. So if you vignette an image and then crop it in, your vignette is still based on the original size of the image. So it makes it hard to do vignettes using the vignette tool if you've cropped an image in any significant way, whereas in Lightroom it's post-crop, so it applies it after you've cropped it. Okay, so next image, again, let's just use one of our presets for this just to do something different. Let me go up to another one of my own, because this is one I like. And yeah, we like this. This is from Film Candy. So this is plain chocolate. Let me try this one. Yeah, okay, we kind of like that. It's a bit. So what I've noticed here is the flesh tones are a bit oversaturated on this. So what I'm going to do is show you another quick little trick. So if I go down here to the different kind of color options, and you see you've got HSL, color, black and white. If I hit black and white, what it'll do is make it black and white, but I don't want that. So just going back to HSL. This is what I want for the moment. So I want to be on saturation. And this little button here, so I'm going to click on this. So what this does is let me drag over an area of the image and reduce the saturation. So I think the flesh tones are a bit overly saturated here, so I'm just going to drag this down just till I get to a point where it's, I don't want to go too far. There, I think that's a bit more natural looking. Okay, and in this case it was mostly the orange and a little bit of yellow. Sometimes you can drag it over different areas. So say for example I wanted to reduce this blue. Bring that down as well. Yeah, it's not too bad. So we're happy with that. Okay, so I think that's everything. Yep, that's all our images. So let me just go back to the library module if I want to see the grid view again. So hit the G key on the keyboard, and there you can see everything. Now, sometimes it doesn't update the previews a bit, which is a bit of a pain, but there you have it. You'll see it kind of updating them there. This is just after you've made changes. It's usually quick enough. Once it does it, it's done it. It'll cache them. Okay, so we can just hop back in and out of any image. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I'm going to export all these. So what I can do is, say I want to export these to go onto my website. So I have a preset template set up for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select them all by hitting Command A, and then I'll go File. I could go Export with Preset. So if you look down here, I have one Retina for Web. So what this is I have a setting set up for exporting to my website. So this is kind of the settings I use. Let me just show you what those settings are, though. I'm not going to go this way. I'm just going to go into Export. So if I just go into here, this brings up the dialog. Okay, so here are all the kind of presets I have saved. So it's on the one I used last, which would be, no, it's not. Ha. So it's this. So this is kind of my default settings. So let me just go show you a few things in here. So export to, choose folder later. So what that does is when you save a preset and you just go export with preset, it'll ask you the folder each time. You can actually set this up for specific folders, so it's handy if you want to, if you're always going to be exporting into the same spot. File renaming, I'm not going to touch that. Down here under file settings, so you have your image format, so this can be any of these. So I'm going to have a JPEG. I have quality down at 65 because it's a large image and I'm using it. It's designed to work with render displays. I keep the quality setting down so it's compressed a bit more. Under image sizing, this tells you what way you want it to fit. So I want to fit by width and height, or you can go by long edge or short edge or megapixels or specific dimensions. In this case, I want width and height, so I'm going to go 2400 by 2400. Don't enlarge, so that'll tell me if it's a smaller image, don't enlarge it. Okay, output sharpening, this is kind of the big one. This is something you can't do in Aperture that you can do in Lightroom. What this basically means is when you're scaling an image down, the anti-aliasing will soften it very slightly, depending on the algorithm. What this does is adds a tiny little bit of sharpening back into it, so it kind of makes your images nice and crisp when you've exported them. So you've got 3 different settings on this. I always leave mine on low. Just that little bit just gives it a little bit more crispness. Okay, so down here we've got a few other things. We have what metadata you can include. If you want to strip the metadata out and only leave copyright info on it, you can do that. You can also tell it to strip out location info. So if you don't want to, give away your location, basically. Okay, and then down here we can have watermarking. So I have a preset set up for my watermarking. In this case, I have a load of them set up. So let me just quickly show you what that looks like. So if I go in here and edit watermarks. So this is the watermark editor. So you can see I have a graphic watermark, which is my signature. I have it very faint on it, so we can have it just down here. You can move this around. So I can... So I can control the inset. Just down the bottom, or I could have it over here, I can control the size of it, and this is proportional, so this will tell you to, depending on the size of your image, scale it proportionally. This is the opacity, so I don't want it fully on. You can also do text-based... sorry, what am I saying? You can also do text-based ones, so I can go... see if I have a text-based one here somewhere. Yeah, so here's a text-based one that I have done earlier. So it's just literally just text. You type on it. Oh, sorry, you type it down here. Okay, but anyway, I'm just going to hit cancel. So that's just kind of a quick look at some of the watermark settings. There's quite a lot you can do in here, actually. It's pretty cool. The scaling works much better than Aperture's as well, and you kind of have a visual preview of it, so you can see what it's going to look like. I always found that a pain to set up an Aperture. You'd have to almost make it the right size for the right image. You could do it, but this is just shows you what it's going to look like. So anyway, I'm going to hit cancel because we don't want to do that. Okay, so what that's going to do is that's going to export everything. So I'm going to hit export. I'm going to give it a folder. Just going to put it in here. Gosh. Export test. Okay, so yeah, that's just going to export all those files. Again, my drives are fairly slow, so this is a problem. This is not Lightroom being slow, this is my computer being slow. To be fair, Lightroom is slower than Aperture. This Aperture will fly through exporting files because it's using the GPU, so that might be something that might be an issue for you. To be honest with you, it's never bothered me. I never export thousands of files at a time, so it's not really that big a deal. Also remember too, it's just kind of rendering out everything each time, and it's also sharpening it. Again, that may be a problem for you. It's not a problem for me. Okay, so that's done. Let me just switch over to the Finder. Come on, Finder. See what I mean about my computer being slow? Okay, and I want to go to here. Okay, so here we go. Here's all the images I just exported. And if we look at them, I can now go and export these up to my computer if I wanted to. So you can see it's done a good job on sharpening them. That's it at 1:1. So there you have it. that's kind of just a brief overview. I know this hasn't exactly been the most comprehensive thing, or I've kind of waffled a bit in places as well, so apologies for that. And also apologies, I know I have a tendency to move my mouse around a lot. I know some people that gives them kind of motion sickness. Again, I'm sorry, it's just a force of habit. I tried to stop myself doing it, but I was doing it. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. I hope this has kind of just given you a rough overview of what using Lightroom is like and hasn't put you off completely. I'll try and do some more videos in the future, and I'll concentrate in specific areas a little bit. If you have any questions and you want to know about specific areas that I've shown, just leave a comment in the comments below, and that's about it. Okay, so we'll talk to you again soon.